On a cold Saturday night in Beverly Hills, a man in simple jeans and a plain black t-shirt walked into the most exclusive charity party of the year. The rich guests took one look at his ordinary clothes and decided he didn't belong. They whispered mean things behind his back. They laughed at how simple he looked. Then they told security to throw him out. But this wasn't just any ordinary man. This was Elon Musk, the richest person on Earth. And he was recording every cruel word they said. What these wealthy bullies didn't know was that their night was about to change forever. But here's the real question that will shock you. Who was the mysterious person secretly watching everything? And what was their incredible plan that even Elon Musk never saw coming? The golden doors of the Beverly Hills Grand Hotel sparkled like jewels under the bright lights. Inside the marble ballroom, the most expensive charity gala of the year was just beginning. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen fireworks, casting dancing shadows on walls covered with famous paintings worth millions of dollars. Rich people in fancy clothes filled the room. Women wore diamond necklaces that cost more than most people's houses. Men adjusted their $1,000 watches and talked loudly about their new cars. Everyone wanted to be seen by everyone else. Sophia Chen stood near the entrance, watching the guests arrive. She had spent months planning this special night. Her kind brown eyes sparkled with hope as she checked her clipboard for the 100th time. Tonight wasn't about showing off expensive clothes or jewelry. Tonight was about helping homeless families find safe places to sleep. "The food looks perfect," Sophia whispered to herself, looking at the fancy tables covered with white cloth. "The flowers are beautiful. Everything is ready." But as she watched the rich guests, her heart began to sink. They seemed more interested in gossip than helping people. She heard them talking about who wore the prettiest dress and who drove the most expensive car to the party. "Did you see Martha's new ring?" one woman said loudly. "It must have cost a fortune." "And look at Robert's suit," another guest replied. "I heard it was made by a famous designer in Italy." Sophia sighed quietly. These people had so much money, but they only cared about impressing each other. Near the bar, Marcus Wellington straightened his gold tie and looked around the room like a king surveying his kingdom. His black suit probably cost more than most people earned in a month. His shiny shoes reflected the chandelier lights as he walked across the marble floor. "This is exactly the kind of event I should be seen at," Marcus said to his friend. "Only, the most important people in the city are here tonight." Marcus owned a big tech company and thought his money made him better than everyone else. He loved looking down on people who weren't as rich as him. It made him feel powerful and special. Across the room, Isabella Romano posed for photographers. Her long red dress sparkled with tiny diamonds, and her jewelry probably cost more than a small house. She was a famous actress who appeared in movies, but she cared more about being in magazines than helping other people. "Make sure you get my good side," Isabella told the photographer. "This dress cost $10,000, and I want everyone to see it." She didn't even know what charity the gala was supporting. Isabella only came because important people would see her here. Dr. James Mitchell sat quietly at a corner table, feeling out of place among all the fancy people. He was an elderly man with kind gray eyes and gentle hands that had helped sick children for 40 years. His black suit was nice but old, and he didn't wear any expensive jewelry. Unlike the other guests, Dr. Mitchell truly cared about helping others. He had spent his whole life working in hospitals, often for very little money. He came tonight because he wanted to support Sophia's important work with homeless families. "I hope we raise a lot of money tonight," Dr. Mitchell said to himself, watching Sophia work so hard to make everything perfect. Those families really need our help. Outside the golden doors, a simple black car pulled up to the hotel entrance. It wasn't a fancy sports car or expensive limousine like the other guests drove. It looked like something a regular person might own. Tony Martinez, the security guard, watched through the glass doors as someone got out of the car. The man wore clean blue jeans and a plain black t-shirt. His shoes were comfortable but not expensive. He carried no fancy watch or gold jewelry. Tony frowned with confusion. This man didn't look like the other guests who had been arriving all evening. Everyone else wore expensive clothes and acted like they owned the world. This person looked normal. The man walked up to the golden doors with quiet confidence. He didn't seem nervous or worried about how he looked. His dark eyes were intelligent and kind, like someone who had seen many interesting things in his life. "Good evening, sir," Tony said politely as the man approached. "Do you have an invitation to tonight's event?" The man smiled gently and reached into his pocket. He pulled out a slightly wrinkled piece of paper and handed it to Tony. It was definitely a real invitation to the gala, but something about it looked different from the others Tony had seen tonight. Tony studied the invitation carefully. The paper was the right color and had all the correct information about the charity event. But in the bottom corner, there was a small symbol that Tony had never noticed on any other invitation. It looked like a rocket ship pointing toward the bomb stars. "This symbol," Tony said, pointing to the corner of the invitation. "What does it mean?" The man's smile grew wider, but he didn't answer the question. Instead, he looked through the golden doors at all the fancy people inside the ballroom. "It looks like a wonderful event," the man said quietly. "I hope it helps many families tonight." Tony felt confused but stepped aside to let the man enter. As the golden doors opened, music and laughter poured out from the party inside. The man in the simple clothes walked into the most exclusive charity gala in Beverly Hills, having no idea that his plain appearance was about to change everything. The man in simple clothes stepped into the ballroom, and the atmosphere changed, like someone had turned down the music. Conversations stopped in the middle of sentences. Champagne glasses froze halfway to lips. Every pair of eyes in the room slowly turned to stare at the newcomer. His blue jeans and black t-shirt looked completely out of place among the sea of expensive gowns and designer suits. While other men wore shiny leather shoes that cost more than most people's monthly rent, his sneakers were clean but ordinary. Where other guests sparkled with gold watches and diamond jewelry, he wore nothing but a simple wedding ring. "Who is that?" whispered a woman in a silver dress that probably cost more than a car. "I have no idea," her friend replied, "but he clearly doesn't belong here." The whispers spread through the ballroom like ripples on a pond. People leaned toward each other, covering their mouths with their hands as they spoke in hushed voices. Marcus Wellington was standing near the chocolate fountain when he spotted the simply dressed man. His face twisted with disgust, like he had just tasted something bitter. "This is unbelievable," Marcus said loudly to his group of friends. "Who let him in here? This is supposed to be a classy event for important people." His voice carried across the room, and several other guests nodded in agreement. They looked at the man like he was a puzzle piece that didn't fit in their perfect picture. Isabella Romano was posing for more photos when she noticed the commotion. She flipped her long red hair over her shoulder and let out a mean laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "Maybe he's here to serve drinks," Isabella said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Or perhaps he's lost and looking for the kitchen to wash dishes." Her cruel words made some people giggle, but their laughter felt cold and ugly in the beautiful ballroom. The man didn't seem to notice all the staring and whispering. He walked calmly through the crowd with quiet confidence, like he belonged exactly where he was. His dark eyes took in everything around him, the expensive decorations, the fancy clothes, the judgmental faces, but his expression remained peaceful and kind. He found a spot near a tall window where he could watch the party without getting in anyone's way. From there, he observed the guests like a scientist studying interesting creatures. He saw how they showed off their jewelry and talked about their expensive cars. He noticed how they ignored the waiters and treated the hotel staff like they were invisible. Sophia Chen was checking on the food tables when she noticed the man standing alone by the window. Her heart ached, seeing how the other guests were treating him. She had worked so hard to make this a welcoming event for everyone who wanted to help homeless families. Taking a deep breath, Sophia walked across the marble floor toward the simply dressed stranger. Her high heels clicked against the ground, but her steps were gentle and kind. "Hi there," Sophia said with a warm smile as she approached. "I'm Sophia Chen. I'm the one who planned this event tonight. Thank you so much for coming." The man turned toward her, and his whole face lit up with genuine happiness. "Thank you for inviting me," he said softly. His voice was calm and intelligent. "This is for such an important cause, helping homeless families find safe places to sleep. That's work that really matters." Sophia felt surprised and pleased. Most of the guests tonight had barely mentioned the actual charity. They seemed more interested in being seen at a fancy party than helping people in need. But this man, who looked so ordinary, immediately talked about what was truly important. "What's your name?" Sophia asked, curious about this interesting stranger. Before the man could answer, heavy footsteps stomped across the marble floor. Marcus Wellington was marching toward them with his chest puffed out like an angry rooster. Behind him followed a small group of other wealthy guests, all looking annoyed and superior. "Sophia!" Marcus called out in a demanding voice. "We need to talk to you about this situation." He stopped right in front of them and pointed rudely at the simply dressed man. "You need to ask this person to leave immediately. He's making our donors very uncomfortable. Just look at how he's dressed." Sophia felt her cheeks grow hot with embarrassment, not for the kind stranger, but for Marcus's rude behavior. "His clothes look perfectly fine to me," she said bravely. "Everyone who wants to help homeless families is welcome at this event." "Not everyone," interrupted Isabella Romano as she joined the growing crowd. Her diamond earrings caught the light as she shook her head dramatically. "This is a high-class charity gala. We have standards to maintain. What will people think if they see someone dressed like that at our event?" More guests gathered around to watch the confrontation. Some pulled out their phones to record what was happening. Others whispered behind their hands, treating the situation like entertainment at a circus. The simply dressed man remained completely calm throughout the whole scene. He didn't argue or defend himself. He didn't get angry or upset. Instead, he watched everyone with those intelligent dark eyes, like he was learning something important about human nature. Dr. James Mitchell had been sitting quietly at his corner table, but the growing commotion caught his attention. He stood up slowly and walked closer to see what was happening. When his elderly eyes focused on the simply dressed man's face, something strange occurred. Dr. Mitchell's face went completely white, like all the blood had drained away. His hands began to shake, and he gripped the back of a nearby chair for support. "It can't be," Dr. Mitchell whispered to himself, staring at the man with wide, shocked eyes. "No, that's impossible." But those eyes, that voice. His quiet words were lost in the noise of the growing crowd, but something in Dr. Mitchell's expression suggested he recognized something very important about the mysterious stranger. Something that would change everything if people knew the truth. The crowd around the simply dressed man grew bigger and louder. More people abandoned their conversations and fancy appetizers to watch the drama unfold. Cell phones appeared in dozens of hands as guests began recording the confrontation. Their faces lit up with the cruel excitement of watching someone else's embarrassment. Marcus Wellington stepped even closer to the mysterious man, his expensive cologne mixing with the smell of his anger. His gold watch caught the chandelier light as he pointed an accusing finger. "Sir, I'm going to have to insist that you leave this event immediately," Marcus announced in a voice loud enough for the entire ballroom to hear. "You are clearly in the wrong place, and your presence here is inappropriate." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Several other wealthy guests nodded their heads and whispered things like, "Finally someone said it," and "This is so embarrassing for all of us." A woman in a purple gown covered with sequins spoke up from the crowd. "What will people think when they see photos of this party? We'll look like we have no standards at all." "Exactly," agreed a man wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than most people's cars. "This could damage our reputations. People might think we associate with just anyone." The simply dressed man listened to all the cruel comments with a sad but patient expression. His dark eyes showed hurt, but there was no anger in them. Instead, he looked at each person, speaking with the kind of understanding that comes from seeing both the best and worst of human nature. "I understand if you want me to go," the man said quietly, his calm voice somehow carrying over all the noise. "I don't want to cause any trouble for anyone. That was never my intention." His gentle response only seemed to make Marcus more aggressive. The tech executive's face turned red with frustration and embarrassment. He wasn't used to people staying so calm when he tried to intimidate them. Sophia Chen felt her heart breaking. As she watched this kind stranger being attacked by people who should know better, she stepped forward, placing herself between Marcus and the man like a shield. "No," Sophia said firmly, her voice stronger than she felt inside. "You don't have to leave. You have every right to be here. You were invited just like everyone else. Some invitations must have been sent by mistake," Isabella Romano said with a cruel smile. She adjusted her diamond necklace and looked around at the crowd for support. Clearly there was some kind of error in the guest list. Marcus turned his attention back to Sophia, his anger now directed at her for defending the stranger. "Sophia, you're being naive. This man doesn't belong here, and deep down you know it. Look around this room. Does he fit in with the kind of people who can afford to make significant donations to your charity?" "Money isn't everything," Sophia replied bravely, though her voice shook slightly. "This event is about helping people, not about showing off expensive clothes." "Money is exactly what this event is about," Marcus shot back. "Without donors like us, your little charity would have nothing. We're the important people here, and we deserve to be comfortable." The crowd pressed closer, forming a tight circle around the confrontation. Some people held up their phones to get better videos. Others whispered excitedly to their friends about the drama they were witnessing. Tony Martinez, the security guard, watched nervously from near the entrance. Could see the situation getting worse and knew he might have to do something about it. His job was to keep everyone at the party safe and comfortable, but he wasn't sure what the right thing to do was. Marcus noticed Tony watching and waved him over with an impatient gesture. "Tony, come here right now. We need you to escort this gentleman out of the building." Tony walked slowly across the marble floor, his uncomfortable expression showing how much he hated this situation. When he reached the group, he looked at the simply dressed man with apologetic eyes. "I'm really sorry, sir," Tony said quietly. "I don't want to do this, but these people pay my salary. I can't afford to lose my job. I have a family to feed." The man nodded with complete understanding. "I know you're just doing what you have to do," he said gently. "I don't blame you at all." But before Tony could move to escort him out, the man reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek black phone. "I should probably call my friend first," he said calmly. "He's supposed to meet me here tonight. He might be worried if I'm not here when he arrives." "No phone calls," Marcus snapped, his patience completely gone. "Just leave right now. We've wasted enough time on this nonsense." The man ignored Marcus's demand and pressed a number on his phone. It rang once, twice, then someone answered on the other end. "Hello?" said a voice that made Dr. Mitchell, who was still watching from the edge of the crowd, gasp quietly and grip his chair even tighter. "Hi, it's me," the simply dressed man said into the phone, his voice still perfectly calm despite everything happening around him. "I'm at the charity gala we talked about, but there seems to be some confusion about whether I should be here. Could you help clear things up?" Dr. Mitchell's face went from white to gray. His hands shook so badly that he had to sit down in the nearest chair. He pressed his fingers to his forehead like he was trying to stop a terrible headache. "This can't be happening," Dr. Mitchell whispered to himself. "Not here. Not like this." Meanwhile, the rest of the crowd listened with growing curiosity to the one-sided phone conversation. Who was this mysterious friend? What kind of help could someone possibly provide that would matter to people as important as they were? The man listened to whoever was on the other end of the phone, nodding occasionally. "Yes, I understand," he said. "No, they're not being violent or anything like that. They just think I don't belong here. My friend will be here in just a few minutes," he announced to the crowd after hanging up. "Then we can sort this whole thing out properly." Marcus rolled his eyes dramatically. "What's your imaginary friend going to do? Buy you a proper suit? Teach you how to behave around important people?" Some people in the crowd laughed at Marcus's sarcastic comment, but others were starting to feel uncomfortable. There was something about the man's complete confidence that didn't match his simple appearance. Most people would be angry or upset by now, but he seemed perfectly calm, like he knew something they didn't. Isabella Romano checked her expensive diamond watch. "How long are we supposed to wait for this mysterious person? I have important people to talk to tonight." Dr. Mitchell couldn't take it anymore. He stood up on shaking legs and started pushing through the crowd, trying to get closer to Marcus and Isabella. He had to stop this before it went too far, but his voice seemed stuck in his throat. Outside the ballroom, the sound of car doors slamming echoed through the hotel's marble entrance hall. Heavy footsteps clicked across the floor with purpose and authority. Tony, who could see through the golden doors, looked out the window and saw something that made his face go completely pale. "Oh no," Tony whispered, his voice filled with panic. "Oh no, oh no, oh no. This is very, very bad." A long black car with government license plates sat in the hotel's circular driveway, the kind of car that only carried very important people to very important places. Inside the ballroom, the tension grew thicker than the expensive perfume floating through the air. Marcus Wellington paced back and forth like a caged tiger, checking his gold watch every few seconds. His face was getting redder with each passing moment. "How much longer do we have to wait for this so-called friend?" Marcus demanded, his voice getting louder and more impatient. "This is ridiculous. We're wasting valuable time that should be spent on important conversations with real donors." The simply dressed man sat calmly in a chair that Sophia had brought over for him. He looked completely relaxed, like he was waiting for a bus instead of being surrounded by angry rich people who wanted him thrown out. This only made Marcus more frustrated. "I can't believe we're all standing around waiting for some nobody," Isabella Romano complained, adjusting her sparkling earrings for the 20th time. "This is supposed to be the most exclusive charity event of the year, not a circus show." "That's exactly why I'm here," the man said softly, his calm voice cutting through all the complaining, "to help raise money for homeless families who need safe places to sleep." Marcus let out a loud, mean laugh that echoed off the marble walls. "You? What could you possibly do to help? You can't even afford decent clothes for a charity gala." His cruel words made several people in the crowd snicker and whisper to each other. They pointed at the man's simple jeans and t-shirt, like they were looking at something funny in a zoo. Dr. James Mitchell finally found the courage to push through the crowd. His wrinkled hand shook as he approached the group, and his voice trembled when he tried to speak. "Perhaps," Dr. Mitchell said carefully, "we should wait to see who this gentleman's friend is before we make any hasty decisions." Isabella turned toward him with a confused expression. "Why would it matter who his friend is?" "Do you know something we don't, Dr. Mitchell?" Dr. Mitchell opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again like a fish gasping for air. His face was still pale, and sweat was forming on his forehead despite the cool air conditioning. He looked like a man carrying a terrible secret that was too big to keep inside. I just think we should be patient," Dr. Mitchell stammered. "Sometimes things are not what they appear to be." Sophia noticed Dr. Mitchell's strange behavior and felt even more curious about the mysterious man. There was definitely something special about him, but she couldn't figure out what it was. The way he stayed so calm while everyone was being mean to him was amazing. Most people would be angry or upset by now. The man's phone rang again, playing a simple tune that sounded friendly and normal. He answered it with the same peaceful smile he had worn all evening. "Yes, I'm still here," he said into the phone. No rush at all. Take your time. I'm actually learning quite a lot about these people and how they treat others. His words sent an uncomfortable chill through the crowd. What kind of things was he learning about them? And why did he sound like he was studying them instead of being hurt by their mean comments? Marcus had heard enough. He marched over and tried to grab the phone right out of the man's hand. "Who are you calling? What kind of game are you playing here?" "Marcus." Sophia gasped, shocked by his rude behavior. "You can't just take someone's phone. Give it back to him right now." But Marcus held the phone up high, out of the man's reach, like a schoolyard bully stealing someone's lunch money. "Not until he tells us exactly who he is and what he really wants from us." For the first time all evening, the simply dressed man looked slightly annoyed. He stood up slowly from his chair, and something in his movement made the whole crowd take a step backward. There was a quiet strength in the way he moved that hadn't been there before. "I want to help homeless children have warm, safe places to sleep at night," the man said firmly, his voice stronger than it had been all evening. "That's why I came here tonight. That's the only reason I ever come to events like this." "Events like this?" Dr. Mitchell whispered, his eyes growing even wider. "You mean you've done this before?" The man nodded, looking directly at Dr. Mitchell. "Many times. I like to see how people treat someone they think is unimportant. It tells me a lot about their true character." A cold shiver ran through the entire crowd. What did he mean by that? Why was he testing them? And who was he to judge their character? "You're testing us?" Isabella asked, her voice high and scared. "What gives you the right to test anyone?" Before the man could answer, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the hotel entrance. Car doors had been slamming outside for the past few minutes, but now someone was definitely walking toward the ballroom. Tony Martinez, the security guard, was still looking through the golden doors with a face full of panic. He pressed his nose against the glass like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "This is bad," Tony muttered to himself. "This is really, really bad. Why didn't anyone tell me? How was I supposed to know?" The footsteps grew louder and more purposeful. They sounded like the kind of footsteps that belonged to people who were used to being in charge of important situations. Marcus still held the phone high above his head like a trophy. "I don't care who your friend is or what kind of test you think you're giving us. You don't belong here and nothing is going to change that fact." "We'll see about that," the man said quietly. But there was something different in his voice now. Something that suggested Marcus might be making a very big mistake. Suddenly, the golden ballroom doors burst open with a loud bang that made everyone jump. A tall man in a serious black suit strode into the room with confidence and authority. Behind him walked several other people, all wearing similar suits and looking very official. The man in the black suit had a small badge on his jacket that made Tony's face go from pale to completely white. The badge read, "Secret Service," in bold letters. The Secret Service agent scanned the crowded ballroom with professional eyes until he spotted the simply dressed man sitting calmly in his chair. When their eyes met, the agent's serious expression changed to one of relief. "There you are, sir," the Secret Service agent said, walking quickly across the marble floor. "We've been looking everywhere for you. The president has been wondering where you disappeared to." The words hit the ballroom like a bomb exploding. Every single person froze exactly where they stood. Champagne glasses stopped halfway to lips. Conversations died in the middle of sentences. Even the background music seemed to get quieter. "The president?" Sophia whispered, her voice barely audible. Marcus Wellington's hand, still holding the stolen phone high in the air, began to shake uncontrollably. The expensive device slipped from his fingers and crashed to the marble floor, shattering into pieces with a sound like breaking glass. The ballroom fell so silent that everyone could hear the tiny pieces of broken phone bouncing across the marble floor. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Every single person stared at the Secret Service agent like he had just announced that aliens had landed outside. Marcus Wellington's face went through a rainbow of colors. Red with anger, white with shock. Then red again with embarrassment. His expensive suit suddenly felt too tight around his neck, and he pulled at his gold tie like it was choking him. Isabella Romano's mouth hung open so wide that a small bird could have flown inside. Her perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide, the horror spreading across her face as she realized what was happening. "The president!" Sophia whispered again, her voice shaking with disbelief. "You said the president?" The Secret Service agent walked straight toward the simply dressed man with the kind of respectful urgency that important people use when they're worried about someone even more important than themselves. "Sir, we've been searching for you everywhere," the agent said, his professional voice carrying clearly through the silent room. "When you didn't arrive at the White House dinner on time, we became concerned for your safety. Protocol requires us to know your location at all times." "I told you I was coming here first," the simply dressed man replied calmly, as if having Secret Service agents look for him was the most normal thing in the world. "This charity event was important to me. I wanted to make sure I could help these
families before attending any government dinners." The agent nodded with understanding. "Of course, sir. We should have sent a security detail with you. It was our mistake to let you come alone."
Dr. Mitchell stepped forward on legs that shook like autumn leaves in the wind. His voice cracked when he tried to speak. "Excuse me, Agent," he said carefully. "Could you please tell us exactly who this gentleman is?" The Secret Service agent looked confused, like Dr. Mitchell had just asked him what color the sky was. "You don't know who this is?" He glanced around the room at all the shocked faces. "This gentleman is—" "Wait," the simply dressed man interrupted, holding up his hand. "Let me introduce myself properly to these nice people." He stood up from his chair and faced the crowd of wealthy guests who had been so cruel to him just minutes earlier. His kind eyes now held a different kind of power, the quiet confidence of someone who was used to changing the world. "My name," he said in a clear, strong voice, "is Elon Musk." The silence that followed was so complete that it seemed to suck all the air out of the room. Then, like a dam bursting, chaos erupted everywhere at once. "Elon Musk!" Marcus screamed, so loudly that the crystal chandeliers seemed to vibrate. "The Elon Musk? The richest man in the world? The one who owns Tesla and SpaceX?" Isabella gasped, her hands flying to her face in horror. "The one who sends rockets to space and makes electric cars," someone else shouted from the back of the crowd. "The one worth hundreds of billions of dollars?" another voice cried out. Elon nodded calmly at each question. "I'm also the one you just spent the last hour trying to throw out of a charity event because you thought my clothes looked too simple." The truth hit the crowd like a giant wave crashing into a sandcastle. Marcus Wellington collapsed into the nearest chair, his face now completely white as fresh snow. His hands covered his eyes like he was trying to hide from reality. "I just insulted Elon Musk," Marcus moaned to himself. "I just embarrassed and humiliated the most powerful man on earth, in front of everyone, with cameras recording everything." Isabella Romano rushed forward like her dress was on fire, her whole personality changing in an instant. The mean, snobbish actress disappeared, replaced by someone desperate to fix a terrible mistake. "Mr. Musk!" she cried, her voice high and panicked. "I am so incredibly sorry, I didn't recognize you. You look so different from your pictures in magazines. Please forgive me." "I look exactly the same as I always do," Elon said quietly. "I just don't wear expensive suits and gold jewelry to impress people who judge others by their appearance." Sophia stared at the man she had defended all evening. She had been kind to Elon Musk, one of the most famous and powerful people on the entire planet, without even knowing who he was. She had treated him well simply because it was the right thing to do. Dr. Mitchell finally found his voice again. "I recognized you," he said, walking closer with more confidence. "I've heard you speak at science conferences about helping sick children. I've seen the millions of dollars you've donated to children's hospitals. I was afraid to say anything, because I thought I might be wrong." "You weren't wrong," Elon said gently. But I'm curious, why didn't you speak up when they were being cruel to me? Dr. Mitchell's shoulders slumped with shame. I was scared, he admitted honestly. These people have money and influence in this city. I was afraid they would be angry with me if I defended you. I was a coward. The crowd began to understand just how badly they had behaved. They had whispered about Elon Musk, laughed at him, and demanded that he be thrown out of a charity event. Now that they knew who he was, they were terrified of what he might do to them. Marcus Wellington tried to stand up, but his legs were shaking too badly to support him. "Mr. Musk," he stammered, his voice cracking like a teenage boy's. "I made a terrible, terrible mistake. I didn't know who you were. If I had known—" "You didn't know what?" Elon asked, his calm voice carrying a hint of sadness. "That you should treat all people with respect and kindness? That someone's worth as a human being isn't measured by the cost of their clothes or the size of their bank account?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a fire. Everyone in the room realized that Elon was right. They hadn't been cruel to him because they didn't know he was famous. They had been cruel because they thought he was ordinary, and they believed ordinary people deserved to be treated badly. People began pulling out their phones, not to record more embarrassing videos, but to frantically delete the ones they had already taken. They realized that videos of them being mean to Elon Musk could destroy their reputations forever. "Please," Isabella begged, tears starting to stream down her cheeks and ruining her expensive makeup. "Please don't tell anyone how we treated you tonight. My new movie comes out next month. If people see how I behaved, my career will be over." "Maybe. Your career should be over," Sophia said quietly, her voice filled with disappointment. "You were cruel to someone you thought couldn't defend themselves. That shows who you really are inside." Elon looked at Sophia with genuine respect and admiration. "You're absolutely right. But I'm more interested in seeing what people choose to do next, now that they know better." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver recording device. When he held it up for everyone to see, the crowd gasped in horror. "I recorded everything that happened here tonight," Elon announced calmly. "Every cruel comment, every mean laugh, every demand that I be thrown out. The question now is, what should I do with this recording?" The small silver recording device in Elon's hand seemed to glow under the bright ballroom lights. Everyone stared at it like it was a dangerous bomb that might explode at any second. The tiny machine held the power to destroy careers, ruin reputations, and change lives forever. "You recorded us?" Marcus Wellington asked, his voice cracking like dry leaves. Sweat was now pouring down his face, making his expensive makeup run in streaky lines. "I record many things," Elon said in his calm, steady voice. "It helps me remember important moments in life, like when people show their true character to someone they think can't hurt them." The crowd looked absolutely terrified. They knew their cruel words and mean laughter were now saved forever on that little device. In today's world of social media and internet videos, this recording could spread around the globe in minutes. Their reputations, their businesses, their entire lives could be destroyed. Isabella Romano suddenly fell to her knees on the marble floor, like she was begging for mercy from a king. Her expensive red dress spread around her like spilled paint, and her diamond jewelry caught the light as she clasped her hands together. "Please, Mr. Musk," Isabella cried dramatically, tears streaming down her face. "I have a new movie coming out next month. If people hear how I treated you tonight, my career will be completely over. I'll never work in Hollywood again." "Maybe that wouldn't be such a bad thing," Sophia said quietly, but her words carried clearly through the silent room. Everyone turned to look at her. "You were deliberately cruel to someone you thought couldn't defend themselves. That shows exactly who you really are inside." Elon smiled at Sophia with genuine warmth and respect. "You're absolutely right, Sophia. But I'm more interested in seeing what people choose to do next, now that they understand the situation better. Doctor, James Mitchell stepped forward with shaking hands and a heavy heart. His elderly face was filled with shame and regret. "Mr. Musk, I owe you the deepest apology of my entire life. I knew who you were from the beginning, but I was too much of a coward to defend you. That makes me just as guilty as everyone else here tonight." "Actually," Elon said gently, "it makes you worse than the others. They were ignorant and made cruel judgments based on appearance, but you knew better and chose to stay silent when you could have helped." Dr. Mitchell's shoulders slumped like he was carrying the weight of the world. He looked like he had aged 10 years in the past 10 minutes. "You're right. I've spent my whole life trying to help sick children, but when it mattered most, I was too scared to help you." The Secret Service agent checked his expensive watch and spoke quietly to Elon. "Sir, the president is expecting you at the White House dinner soon. We really should be leaving." "Tell him I'll be a little late," Elon replied, without taking his eyes off the crowd. "I'm still learning valuable lessons about human nature. This is more educational than any government dinner could be." Marcus Wellington suddenly jumped up from his chair like he had been struck by lightning. His face was bright red with panic and anger. He pointed at Elon with a shaking finger. "This isn't fair!" Marcus shouted desperately. "How were we supposed to know you were Elon Musk? You look like what?" Elon asked quietly, but there was steel in his voice now. "Like a normal person," Marcus screamed, then immediately realized how terrible that sounded. "Exactly right," Elon said with a sad smile. "I look like a normal person because I am a normal person. I just happen to have more money than most people. But money doesn't make me better than anyone else." "But you're not normal," Isabella protested, struggling to stand up in her tight dress. "You're famous. You're on magazine covers. You should look famous. You should dress like you're important." "I am important," Elon agreed calmly. "But not because of my clothes or my car or my jewelry. I'm important because of what I do with my life. Because I try to help people and make the world a better place for everyone." Sophia felt tears forming in her eyes as she watched this incredible scene unfold. She was seeing the richest man in the world teach these snobby, selfish people about what really matters in life. It was like watching a master teacher give the most important lesson ever. "So what happens now?" Marcus asked desperately, his voice high and scared. "Are you going to post that recording on the internet? Are you going to destroy all of us?" Elon held up the silver device and looked at it thoughtfully, like he was trying to decide the fate of everyone in the room. "That depends entirely on what you people do in the next few minutes." "What do you mean?" Dr. Mitchell asked nervously. "I mean," Elon said, walking to the center of the ballroom so everyone could see and hear him clearly, "this charity event tonight is supposed to raise money for homeless families who need safe places to sleep. So far this evening, you've all been much more interested in gossip, showing off, and judging people than actually helping those who need it most." Elon's quiet voice somehow filled every corner of the enormous room. "I came here tonight planning to donate $10 million to Sophia's wonderful charity." The crowd gasped like they had all been punched in the stomach. $10 million. That was more money than most of them would see in their entire lifetimes. It was enough to help thousands of homeless families. "But," Elon continued, his voice becoming more serious, "before I make that donation, I want to see what you people are willing to give. Not because you have to, not because you're scared of what I might do with this recording, but because helping homeless children is the right thing to do." He walked over to a table and carefully placed the recording device where everyone could see it clearly. The little silver machine sat there like a judge waiting to make a decision about their futures. "I'm going to leave this recording device right here for exactly 5 minutes," Elon announced. "When I come back, I want to see how much money you've raised for homeless families tonight. Then I'll decide what to do with everything I recorded." The crowd watched in terrified silence as Elon walked toward the golden doors that led out of the ballroom. But just before he reached the exit, he stopped and turned back around with a mysterious smile on his face. Oh, and one more thing, Elon said, his eyes twinkling with a secret. There's someone else coming to this party tonight who you definitely don't want to disappoint. Someone who will be very interested in how you've all behaved this evening. The moment Elon disappeared through the golden doors, the ballroom exploded into chaos like a beehive that had been kicked by a giant. People were shouting, crying, and running around in circles like chickens with their heads cut off. $10 million, Marcus Wellington screamed at the top of his lungs. He's planning to donate $10 million to this charity. We have to give money too, Isabella Romano cried, mascara streaming down her cheeks in black rivers. We have to show him that we're good people. We have to prove we care about homeless families. But Sophia Chen stood quietly in the corner, watching all the frantic activity, with sad, disappointed eyes. She could see right through their sudden generosity. These people weren't being kind because they cared about homeless children. They were only giving money because they were terrified of what Elon might do with that recording. Dr. Mitchell walked over to Sophia with slow, heavy steps. His wrinkled face showed how ashamed he felt about everything that had happened tonight. You look upset, Dr. Mitchell said gently to Sophia. I thought you would be happy about this. Your charity is about to receive more money than you ever dreamed possible. I am happy about the money, Sophia replied honestly. But I'm heartbroken about the reasons behind it. These people are only being generous now because they're scared, not because they actually care about helping families who need homes. Dr. Mitchell nodded slowly, understanding exactly what she meant. Does it really matter why they give money, as long as children get the help they need? Sophia thought about his question for a long moment. I don't know, she said finally. Maybe it doesn't matter to the homeless children. They need food and shelter no matter what motivates people to help them. But it still makes me sad that kindness has to be forced instead of coming naturally from people's hearts. Across the room, Marcus Wellington was frantically pressing numbers on his phone, shouting at his banker even though it was late at night. I need to transfer money immediately, Marcus yelled into his phone. Yes, I know the bank is closed. This is a life or death emergency. Isabella Romano was doing the same thing, but she was also sobbing loudly between phone calls. My agent is going to kill me when he finds out about this, she cried to anyone who would listen. If that recording gets posted online, I'll never get another movie role for the rest of my life. Other wealthy guests throughout the ballroom were pulling out their expensive phones, calling their assistants, and frantically accessing their banking apps. The air filled with desperate voices promising huge donations to Sophia's charity. I'll give $50,000, one person shouted across the room. That's nothing. I'll give $100,000, yelled another guest, trying to sound more generous. $200,000, screamed a third person, not wanting to be outdone. Soon the ballroom turned into a crazy bidding war, with rich people trying to outdo each other by promising bigger and bigger amounts of money. But Elon wasn't even in the room to see their desperate competition. Tony Martinez, the security guard, watched the chaos from his position near the doorway. He felt terrible about almost throwing out the world's richest and most famous man. His job was definitely in serious danger now, and he knew it. Sophia walked over to the donation table and started writing down all the amounts that people were shouting out. In just 3 minutes, she had recorded over $5 million in promised donations. This is absolutely incredible, Sophia whispered to herself, staring at the growing numbers on her paper. We'll be able to help thousands of homeless families with this much money. But even as she wrote down the huge amounts, Sophia still felt conflicted inside. This money could change thousands of lives for the better, but it was coming from people who had been cruel and heartless just minutes before. Was money given out of fear as valuable as money given out of love? Dr. Mitchell joined Sophia at the donation table, pulling out his own checkbook with shaking hands. I want to make a donation too, he said quietly. Not because I'm scared of that recording, but because helping homeless families is the right thing to do. I'm giving everything I have in my savings account. Sophia looked at the amount Dr. Mitchell had written down. $25,000. Compared to the huge numbers being shouted by other guests, it wasn't an enormous amount. But Sophia knew this represented Dr. Mitchell's entire life savings, money he had worked 40 years to earn helping sick children. "This donation means more to me than all the others combined," Sophia told him with genuine warmth, "because it comes from your heart, not from your fear." Dr. Mitchell smiled sadly. "I just wish I had been brave enough to defend Elon when I recognized him. My cowardice tonight will haunt me for the rest of my life." The 5 minutes were almost finished. People were still shouting donation amounts and making frantic phone calls. The total amount of money promised was now over $8 million, more than Sophia had ever imagined possible. Then the ballroom doors opened again with a soft whisper. But it wasn't Elon who walked back into the room. Instead, a woman in a simple blue dress entered the ballroom, followed by more Secret Service agents. She was older, with kind gray hair and gentle eyes that sparkled with intelligence and warmth. Her dress was nice, but not expensive, and she wore comfortable shoes instead of fancy high heels. "Good evening, everyone," the woman said with a warm, friendly smile. "I'm looking for my friend Elon. We're supposed to have dinner together tonight." Marcus Wellington looked up from his phone and his face went completely white, like all the blood had drained out of his body. Isabella Romano took one look at the woman and fainted again, falling to the marble floor with a loud thud. Dr. Mitchell's mouth fell open so wide that his dentures nearly fell out. He gripped the edge of the donation table to keep from falling over himself. The woman in the simple blue dress was someone that everyone in America recognized from television and newspapers. But she wasn't supposed to be here at this charity gala. This was completely impossible. "Oh my," the woman said, with a gentle laugh, looking around at all the shocked and terrified faces. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. By the way, has anyone seen my husband? The president was wondering where Elon disappeared to for so long." The First Lady of the United States stood in the ballroom doorway, looking exactly like any normal person visiting friends for dinner. She wasn't, wearing an expensive designer gown covered in diamonds or fancy jewelry that cost more than most people's houses. She just had on a simple blue dress and comfortable walking shoes. "The president?" Marcus Wellington whispered, in a voice so quiet it was barely audible. Then his legs gave out completely, and he collapsed back into his chair like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Isabella Romano, who had just woken up from fainting, looked at the First Lady with wide, terrified eyes. The shock of seeing the president's wife standing casually in the ballroom was too much for her brain to handle. She fainted again immediately, falling backward onto the marble floor with another loud thump. "Oh dear," the First Lady said, rushing over to help Isabella with genuine concern. "Is she all right? Should we call a doctor? I hope she didn't hurt herself when she fell." Her kindness and worry were completely real. Even though these people had been acting terribly all evening, she still cared about their health and safety. It was the natural reaction of someone who truly cared about all people, regardless of how they behaved. Dr. Mitchell found his voice first, though it shook like leaves in a strong wind. "Ma'am, we are deeply honored by your presence here tonight. We had absolutely no idea you were planning to attend this charity event. Please, just call me Sarah," the First Lady said, with a warm, genuine smile. "I'm not here in any official capacity tonight. I'm simply here as Elon's friend. We've been working together for months on new programs to help homeless veterans find jobs and safe places to live." Sophia stepped forward carefully, still holding her list of donation promises. Her hands were shaking slightly as she tried to process everything that was happening. "Mrs. Sarah, I'm Sophia Chen. I'm the person who organized this charity event. Tonight." "How wonderful to meet you," Sarah exclaimed with real enthusiasm. "Elon has told me so many amazing things about your work helping families in need. You're doing truly incredible things for people who have nowhere else to turn." "Thank you so much," Sophia said, then hesitated for a moment. But there's something very important you should know about what happened here tonight before you arrived. Before Sophia could explain the terrible events of the evening, Elon returned to the ballroom through the golden doors. When he saw Sarah standing there talking to the guests, his entire face lit up with genuine happiness and relief. "There you are," Elon said, walking quickly over to give Sarah a warm, friendly hug. "I was wondering when you would find me." "How? Did you track me down to this place?" Sarah laughed like she was talking to an old friend. "Your security detail called the White House when you went missing from the dinner schedule. The president was getting worried that you had been kidnapped by space aliens or something equally dramatic." "Not space aliens," Elon said with a slight smile, glancing meaningfully at the crowd of wealthy guests. "Just regular humans behaving very badly towards someone they thought was unimportant." Sarah noticed the strange tension filling the ballroom, like thick fog. She could see the fear and guilt written across every face in the room. "What exactly happened here tonight, Elon?" Elon walked over to the table and picked up his small silver recording device. "These people tried to force me to leave this charity event because they thought my clothes weren't fancy enough for their high-class party. They decided I didn't belong here based entirely on my appearance." Sarah's kind expression didn't change at all, but something subtle shifted in her gentle eyes. "They did what to you?" "It's perfectly fine," Elon said calmly. "It was actually very educational for me. I learned quite a lot about human nature and how people treat others when they think no one important is watching." Marcus Wellington struggled to stand up on his wobbly legs. His face was still pale, and sweat continued to pour down his forehead. "Mrs. First Lady, ma'am, we made the most terrible mistake of our entire lives. We didn't know it was Elon Musk. If we had recognized him, we never would have treated him badly. So?" Sarah asked quietly, her gentle voice somehow carrying more power than any shouting could. "You would have treated anyone else the same cruel way?" The simple question hit like a lightning bolt striking the ground. Marcus suddenly realized that Sarah was absolutely right. They had been cruel to someone they thought was ordinary and unimportant. That was actually much worse than being mean to someone famous. We raised $8 million for the charity," Isabella Romano shouted desperately, having woken up from her second fainting spell. "We're good people. Look how much money we're giving to help homeless families." "Are you really good people?" Sarah asked gently, her words soft but penetrating. "Good people don't usually need to be threatened and scared into being generous to those in need." Dr. Mitchell stepped forward with his head hanging in shame. "She's absolutely right about us. We've all behaved shamefully tonight. The money we promised is wonderful for the homeless families, but our motivations were completely wrong. We only became generous after we got scared." Sophia held up her donation list with mixed feelings. "Actually, there is one donation that was given for all the right reasons." She looked at Dr. Mitchell with deep respect and admiration. Dr. Mitchell gave his entire life savings because he genuinely wanted to help homeless children, not because he was afraid of consequences. Sarah walked over to Dr. Mitchell and shook his wrinkled hand with sincere gratitude. "Thank you so much for your genuine kindness and generosity. The world needs more people like you." "I still should have defended Elon when I recognized him earlier," Dr. Mitchell said sadly. "I knew who he was, but I was too much of a coward to speak up. That makes me feel terrible about myself." "But you're being brave and honest now," Sarah replied with understanding. "That's what really matters. It's never too late to choose courage over fear." Elon looked around the room at all the frightened, guilty faces staring back at him. "I have an important decision to make about this recording. But first, I want to know something honest from all of you. If I deleted this recording right now, if there were absolutely no consequences for your behavior tonight, would you still honor all those donation promises you made?" The room fell into heavy silence. It was the ultimate test of their character and honesty. One by one, people began to speak their truth. I honestly don't know if I would," Marcus admitted quietly, his voice filled with shame. "I probably wouldn't give as much, Isabella whispered, unable to look anyone in the eyes. I might give something smaller instead, another guest said reluctantly. Only. Dr. Mitchell spoke with complete certainty. I would honor every penny of my pledge, no matter what happened to that recording. Those homeless families need help, and my promise to them has nothing to do with fear or consequences. Sarah whispered something quietly in Elon's ear that made him nod and smile mysteriously. Actually, Elon announced to the crowd, there's one more person coming to this charity event tonight that all of you need to meet. Someone who will help us decide what to do with this recording and everything that happened here. Just as Elon finished speaking, the ballroom doors opened one more time. This time, it wasn't Secret Service agents or government officials walking through the entrance. Instead, a very small, elderly woman slowly entered the room, using a silver walker to help her move. Behind her walked a young nurse in simple white clothes. The woman was tiny and fragile, like a delicate bird that might blow away in a strong wind. She wore a faded pink dress that looked like it had come from a thrift store, and her old black shoes were clean but worn from many years of walking. Her gray hair was pulled back in a simple bun, and her wrinkled hands gripped her walker with determination. Sorry I'm late, dear, the elderly woman said to Elon in a shaky voice that was still warm and kind. The traffic tonight was absolutely terrible, and my old bones don't move as fast as they used to. Elon's entire face changed the moment he saw her. All his calm confidence melted away, replaced by the gentle, caring expression of a grandson greeting his most beloved grandmother. He rushed over to help her to a comfortable chair, treating her like the most precious person in the world. Everyone, Elon announced with deep respect and love in his voice. I'd like you to meet Mrs. Dorothy Williams. She's the most important reason I'm here tonight. The wealthy guests looked around at each other with complete confusion. Who was this ordinary old woman? Why was the world's richest man treating her like royalty? She looked like someone's grandmother, not someone famous or powerful. Marcus Wellington squinted at Dorothy, trying to figure out if he should recognize her. Is she someone important that we should know about? She's the most important person in this entire room, Elon said firmly, his voice filled with emotion. More important than me, more important than Sarah, more important than anyone else here tonight. Dorothy chuckled softly, a sound like gentle wind chimes. Oh, stop it, Elon. You're going to embarrass this old lady. I'm nobody special. Tell them your story, Mrs. Williams, Sarah, the First Lady, said gently, settling into a chair beside Dorothy. Tell them why you're here and why Elon cares about you so much. Dorothy looked around the room with bright, intelligent eyes that sparkled, despite her age. Even though her body was frail and weak, there was something powerful and wise about her presence that made everyone pay attention. 60 years ago, Dorothy began in her soft, trembling voice, I was a young teacher in Detroit. I had a student named Marcus in my class. Not you, dear, she said with a kind smile toward Marcus Wellington, but another boy with the same name. This child was absolutely brilliant, but he came from a very poor family. His clothes were old and full of holes. Other children made fun of him every single day. The room became completely silent as everyone listened to Dorothy's story. One day, my student Marcus came to school with no lunch at all. His parents couldn't afford to buy him any food that day. The other children in the class laughed at him and called him terrible names. I watched my poor student sit alone at his desk, hungry and deeply ashamed. Dorothy's voice grew stronger and more determined as she continued. That day, I made a cool decision that changed the rest of my life. I started bringing extra lunch to school every single day, not just for Marcus, but for any child who came to class hungry. I used my own money to buy food, which wasn't very much on a teacher's small salary. That's very kind of you, Sophia said softly, moved by Dorothy's compassion. I didn't stop there. Dorothy continued with a gentle smile. I did this for 40 years, every single school day for 4 decades. I fed thousands of hungry children. I bought them warm clothes when they needed them. I helped them with their homework after school. I showed them that someone in the world cared about them and believed they were important. What happened to that boy, Marcus? Dr. Mitchell asked. Genuinely curious, Dorothy's eyes lit up with pride and joy. Marcus grew up to become a doctor, just like you. He now runs 3 free medical clinics in poor neighborhoods, helping families who can't afford health care. He saved thousands of lives and never charges anyone a penny for his help. That's such a beautiful story, Isabella said quietly. But I still don't understand why you're here tonight at this charity event. Dorothy's expression became more serious, and her voice carried a note of sadness. Because when I finally retired after 40 years of teaching, I had absolutely no money left at all. I had spent everything I earned helping hungry children. I was about to lose my little house and had nowhere to go. I was going to be homeless myself. That's terrible, Sophia exclaimed, her heart breaking for this wonderful woman. But then, Dorothy continued, her face brightening again, a young man heard about my situation from one of the doctors I had helped as a child. This young man bought me a beautiful house, set up a special fund to pay for all my medical care, and visits me every month to make sure I have everything I need. She reached over with her wrinkled hand and gently patted Elon's arm. This young man saved my life when I was old and forgotten by most of the world. He didn't do it for newspaper stories or to get famous. He did it because he believed that teachers who spend their lives helping children deserve help in return when they need it most. The crowd began to understand something amazing. Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, quietly takes care of an elderly teacher who spent her life savings helping poor children. He doesn't brag about it or use it for publicity. He just does it because it's the right thing to do. Mrs. Williams, Elon said gently, I want you to listen to something very important. He played back parts of his recording from earlier in the evening, letting Dorothy hear the cruel comments, the mean laughter, and the demands that he be thrown out of the party. Dorothy listened quietly to the terrible words, her face growing sadder with each cruel comment. When the recording finished, she looked around the room at all the ashamed faces. These people were mean to you because of how you looked? Dorothy asked Elon. They were, Elon confirmed. They judged me entirely by my clothes and decided I didn't belong at a charity event for homeless families. Dorothy looked around the room at Marcus, Isabella, and all the other wealthy guests. That's exactly what those cruel children did to my student Marcus 60 years ago. They judged him by his old, torn clothes and decided he wasn't worthy of their friendship or respect. It's not the same thing at all, Marcus Wellington protested weakly, but his voice had no strength behind it. Isn't it exactly the same? Dorothy asked with gentle but firm authority. You saw someone who looked different from you and immediately decided they were less valuable as a human being. That's precisely what bullies do to people they think can't fight back. The comparison hit everyone in the room like a physical blow. They realized they had been acting like schoolyard bullies, picking on someone they thought was weak and defenseless. Dorothy struggled to stand up from her chair, and both Elon and Sarah immediately moved to help her. Despite her small size and frail appearance, when she stood up, she seemed to fill the entire room with her presence. I have something very important to say about this recording, Dorothy announced, her voice carrying more authority than any government official. And I think my decision might surprise every single one of you. Dorothy Williams stood as tall as her frail old body would allow. Even though she was the smallest person in the entire ballroom, everyone hung on her every word like she was the most important judge in the world. I've been thinking very carefully about this recording, Dorothy said slowly, her voice clear despite her age. And I know exactly what should be done with it. Marcus Wellington held his breath so long that his face started turning blue. Isabella Romano gripped the sides of her chair with white knuckles. Everyone in the room expected Dorothy to demand that the recording be released to the world, destroying their reputations and careers forever. You should keep that recording, Elon, Dorothy said firmly. But not for the reason any of you might think. What do you mean, Mrs. Williams? Elon asked gently, though he looked just as surprised as everyone else. Dorothy smiled at him with the deep wisdom of someone who had lived through many decades and learned important lessons about human nature. You should keep it to remind yourself that good character isn't about how much money you have or how famous you are. It's about how you treat people when you think no one important is watching. She turned slowly to face the crowd of wealthy guests, her bright eyes looking directly at each person. All of you were cruel to Elon tonight. You laughed at him, whispered about him, and demanded that he be thrown out of this charity event. But you know what? I've seen much worse behavior than this. I've watched children be mean to other children for much smaller reasons than you had tonight. We're not children, Marcus said quietly, his voice barely audible. Aren't you? Dorothy asked with gentle but firm authority. You acted exactly like children tonight. You were scared and confused, so you tried to hurt someone else to make yourselves feel better. You wanted to feel important and superior, so you put another person down. Her words cut deep into everyone's hearts, because they were completely true and impossible to argue with. But here's the most important thing I learned in 40 years of teaching children, Dorothy continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. People can change. Children who are bullies one day can become protectors and helpers the next. Adults who make terrible mistakes can learn to do much better. She looked directly at Marcus Wellington with eyes full of compassion instead of anger. You completely humiliated yourself tonight, Marcus. You showed everyone in this room your very worst side. The question now is, what are you going to do about it? Marcus looked down at his expensive shoes, unable to meet Dorothy's wise gaze. I honestly don't know what to do, he admitted. I know exactly what you're going to do, Dorothy said with quiet confidence. You're going to honor every single penny of that donation you promised tonight. Not because you're scared of that recording, but because homeless children desperately need help. You're going to visit the shelter and meet the families your money is helping. You're going to remember their faces the next time you want to judge someone by their appearance. She turned to Isabella Romano, who was still crying softly. And you, Isabella, are going to use your fame and influence for something truly good. You're going to talk about this experience publicly and help other people learn from the mistake you made tonight. Isabella nodded eagerly through her tears. I will. I promise. I'll tell everyone about how wrong I was and how much I learned. Dorothy looked at Dr. Mitchell with understanding and kindness. And you, dear doctor, are going to find your courage. You're going to speak up loudly the next time you see someone being treated unfairly, even if it's scary or uncomfortable. Yes, ma'am, Dr. Mitchell said with new determination in his voice. I promise I will never stay silent again when someone needs defending. Finally, Dorothy turned to Sophia with a warm, proud smile. And you, sweet girl, are going to continue being exactly who you are. You showed genuine kindness to a stranger when everyone else showed cruelty. That's true character, and the world needs more people like you. Sophia wiped away tears of gratitude and emotion. Thank you so much, Mrs. Williams. Dorothy sat back, down in her chair, looking exhausted from her long speech, but satisfied with what she had said. Now, about that recording device. Everyone in the room tensed up again, waiting to hear their final fate. I think you should delete it completely. Elon, Dorothy said calmly. Gasps of shock and disbelief filled the ballroom. No one had expected this decision at all. Really? Elon asked, looking genuinely surprised. You want me to erase everything? Really? Dorothy confirmed with absolute certainty. These people have learned their lesson tonight. They've committed to helping homeless families with their donations. They've seen their own behavior clearly for the first time. Punishing them further won't help anyone. But what if they don't keep their promises? Sarah, the First Lady, asked with concern. Dorothy smiled with the patience of someone who had spent decades understanding human nature. then that's between them and their own consciences. Sometimes the most powerful punishment is having to live with the knowledge of what you've done wrong. She looked around the room one final time, with eyes full of wisdom and understanding. Besides, I truly believe that people can change and grow. If I didn't believe that, I wouldn't have spent 40 years of my life teaching children. Elon held up the small silver recording device, looking at Dorothy with deep respect and admiration. Mrs. Williams, are you absolutely sure about this decision? I'm completely sure, Dorothy said firmly. But I do have one important condition that everyone must agree to. What's that? Marcus asked nervously, wondering what else might be required of them. Next year, I want all of you to come back to this same charity event, Dorothy announced with a mischievous twinkle in her old eyes. I want you to bring your friends and family members. I want you to remember what you learned tonight and share these lessons with other people. And, Dorothy added with a smile that showed she was enjoying this part, I want every single one of you to dress simply. No fancy designer clothes, no expensive jewelry, no showing off with luxury items. I want you to remember exactly what it feels like to be judged by your appearance. The room erupted in surprised murmurs and whispers. They were being asked to experience the same treatment they had given Elon tonight. Will you agree to do that? Dorothy asked, looking at each person individually. One by one, every person in the room nodded their agreement. Even Marcus Wellington, who had started this whole terrible situation, agreed to return next year dressed like an ordinary person. Elon looked at the recording device one more time, then pressed a button that deleted the entire file forever. It's completely gone, he announced to the room. The relief that filled the ballroom was overwhelming, but it was mixed with something else that was even more important: genuine shame and a sincere desire to become better people. As Dorothy prepared to leave with her nurse, she whispered something quietly to Elon that made his eyes grow wide with amazement. You did what? Elon asked in complete shock. But Dorothy just smiled mysteriously and refused to explain what she meant, leaving everyone wondering what other secrets this remarkable woman might be hiding. As the evening slowly came to an end, people began saying their goodbyes. The whole atmosphere in the ballroom had completely changed from the beginning of the night. Instead of showing off expensive clothes and gossiping about each other, guests were talking quietly about the important lessons they had learned. Marcus Wellington walked up to Elon with nervous, shaking steps. His face was still pale, but his eyes showed genuine regret and sorrow. Mr. Musk, I owe you the biggest apology of my entire life. I was cruel, mean, and judgmental. I showed you everything that's wrong with people like me. I accept your apology, Elon said simply, his voice kind but serious. But the real test isn't saying you're sorry. The real test is what you choose to do differently from now on. I understand completely, Marcus said, nodding his head. I'm going to visit the homeless shelter this weekend. I want to see the actual faces of the people my donation will help. I want to remember them every time I feel tempted to judge someone by their appearance. Isabella Romano joined their conversation, her fancy makeup now smeared from all her crying. I've been thinking about what Mrs. Williams said. I want to make a documentary about what happened here tonight. Not to make myself look good, but to help other people learn from the terrible mistakes I made. That's a wonderful idea, Elon agreed. But make sure you tell the complete truth in your documentary, even the parts that make you look bad. Especially those parts, Isabella promised with new sincerity. People need to see how ugly prejudice really looks. Dr. Mitchell walked over to Dorothy, who was resting quietly in her chair. Mrs. Williams, I want you to know that your words tonight have completely changed my life. I've been a coward for far too long. We're all cowards sometimes, dear, Dorothy said gently, patting his wrinkled hand. The truly brave thing is admitting your fear and choosing to do better next time. Sophia had been working hard to organize all the donation commitments from the evening. The final total is $9.7 million, she announced to the room. Combined, with Elon's $10 million donation, we've raised almost $20 million for homeless families tonight. The room broke into quiet applause, but it was completely different from the fake enthusiasm earlier in the evening. This applause was genuine, humble, and filled with real hope for the families who would be helped. $20 million will help thousands of families find safe homes, Sarah, the First Lady, observed thoughtfully. Sometimes the most difficult situations can lead to the most beautiful outcomes. As people slowly prepared to leave the ballroom, Dorothy struggled to stand up again from her chair. Elon immediately moved to help her, but she gently waved him away with a mysterious smile. "Before we all go home tonight, I need to tell everyone something important," Dorothy announced. "Something I haven't shared with you yet." The room grew quiet again as people wondered what else this remarkable woman could possibly reveal. Earlier this evening, Elon was very surprised when I whispered something to him. "You see, I have a confession to make about who I really am." Dorothy's eyes sparkled with mischief and secrets. "I'm not just a poor, retired teacher who Elon helps take care of. There's much more to my story than that." "What do you mean?" Sophia asked with growing curiosity. 60 years ago, when I was feeding hungry children with my own money, I started a small program at my school. I called it Teachers Helping Teachers. We raised money to help other educators who were struggling to pay their bills. She paused, dramatically, looking around the room with a smile that suggested she was enjoying this revelation. That little program grew bigger and bigger over the years. Other teachers joined our cause. Then parents started helping. Then local businesses began donating money. Eventually, it became something much larger than I ever imagined. "How much larger?" Dr. Mitchell asked, sensing that something amazing was coming. Dorothy chuckled softly, the sound like gentle music. "Large enough that it's now a billion-dollar foundation that helps children and teachers all over the world." The room erupted in shocked gasps and amazed whispers. Dorothy Williams wasn't just a poor retired teacher. She was the founder of one of the world's largest educational charities. "You're rich?" Marcus asked in complete amazement, his mouth hanging open. "Very rich," Dorothy confirmed with a twinkle in her eye. "But I still live in a simple house. I still wear old clothes from thrift stores. I still drive a 15-year-old car that barely runs. Because I learned a very long time ago that a person's true worth has absolutely nothing to do with how much money they have or what expensive things they own." Elon was grinning from ear to ear like a proud grandson. "This is exactly why I love and respect you so much, Mrs. Williams. You taught me the same lesson you're teaching everyone here tonight." "What lesson is that?" Isabella asked. "That real wealth isn't money," Dorothy explained with the wisdom of her many years. "Real wealth is kindness, compassion, and the ability to see the good in other people even when they can't see it in themselves." She looked directly at Marcus Wellington with eyes full of understanding. "Tonight, Marcus, you showed your absolute worst side to everyone in this room. But I've seen enough people in my long life to know that your worst side isn't your only side. You have the capacity for great kindness and generosity if you choose to use it." Marcus felt tears forming in his eyes. "How can you possibly have faith in me after what I did tonight?" "Because," Dorothy said simply, "someone once had faith in me when I made terrible mistakes. And someone had faith in that hungry little boy named Marcus in my classroom many years ago. And someone had faith in Elon when he was just a young man with big dreams and crazy ideas." She gestured around the room with her frail hand. "We're all connected to each other. We all have the power to lift each other up or tear each other down. Tonight, most of you chose to tear someone down. But tomorrow, you can choose to lift people up instead." The weight and wisdom of her words settled over everyone like a warm blanket. They realized they had been in the presence of not one, but two extraordinary people who could have easily looked down on them, but chose compassion and understanding instead. "There's one more thing I need to tell you," Dorothy added with a mischievous grin. "That billion-dollar foundation I mentioned? Well, it's about to have a very generous new major donor. She slowly pulled out an old, worn checkbook and began writing with shaking hands. When she finished, she handed the check to Sophia with a proud smile. $50 million, Dorothy announced to the stunned room. For your wonderful homeless shelter program. Sophia stared at the check in complete shock. $50 million! Combined with all the other donations from tonight, they now had almost $70 million to help homeless families. Mrs. Williams, Sophia whispered, this is incredible. This will change thousands of lives. That's exactly the point. Dear, Dorothy said with satisfaction, changing lives for the better is what we're all here for. As everyone celebrated this amazing generosity, Dorothy pulled Elon aside one more time. There's still one more secret I haven't told you, she whispered with sparkling eyes. Something about tonight that even you don't know. Elon's eyes widened as Dorothy explained her final secret, and he looked around the room with completely new understanding of everything that had happened. Dorothy Williams pulled Elon to the quietest corner of the ballroom, away from all the celebrating guests. Her bright old eyes sparkled with a secret that had been building inside her all evening long. Elon, my dear boy, Dorothy whispered carefully. This whole evening wasn't really an accident at all. What do you mean? Elon asked, his voice filled with confusion and curiosity. Dorothy glanced around to make sure no one else could hear their private conversation. I knew you were coming to this charity event tonight. I knew you would dress in your simple clothes. And I had a pretty good idea exactly how these wealthy people would react to you. Elon's mouth fell wide open in complete amazement. You planned all of this? Not exactly planned, Dorothy said thoughtfully, choosing her words very carefully. But I certainly hoped for it to happen. You see, I've been watching these particular people for many months. I attend charity events all the time, dressed in my old thrift store clothes, and I see exactly how they treat people they think are unimportant. She pointed discreetly toward Marcus Wellington, who was still talking quietly with other guests about his promise to visit the homeless shelter. That man has been incredibly rude to waiters, janitors, and parking attendants at every single charity event I've attended this year. He desperately needed to learn what it feels like to be on the receiving end of such cruel treatment. And Isabella? Elon asked with growing understanding. She once made a young volunteer worker cry because the poor girl's dress wasn't expensive enough for Isabella's standards, Dorothy said sadly, shaking her gray head. These people badly needed to see their own terrible behavior reflected back at them like a mirror. Elon stared at Dorothy with completely new admiration and respect. You're not just kind and generous, Mrs. Williams. You're absolutely brilliant. I prefer to think I'm old and wise, Dorothy corrected with a modest smile. There's an important difference between those two things. But how did you know I would go along with your plan? What if I had told everyone who I was right away? Dorothy's eyes twinkled with the mischief of someone who understood human nature perfectly. Because I know you very well, Elon Musk. You're naturally curious about what makes people behave the way they do. You like to understand the deeper reasons behind human actions. I knew you'd want to see exactly how far their cruelty would go. You used my curiosity against me, Elon said, but he was grinning with delight. I used your natural interest in human behavior to teach some very important lessons to people who desperately needed to learn them, Dorothy agreed. And it worked perfectly, didn't it? They both looked around the transformed ballroom. Marcus. Wellington was having an earnest conversation with Sophia about the best ways to help homeless families. Isabella Romano was on her phone with her agent, discussing how to make an honest documentary about prejudice and kindness. Dr. Mitchell was writing down Dorothy's address so he could visit her foundation and volunteer his medical skills. It worked better than I ever dreamed, Elon admitted with wonder. But there's still something I don't understand. How did you arrange for Sarah to come here? How did you get the president to be looking for me? Dorothy's mysterious smile grew even wider and more secretive. Who do you think suggested that you should have dinner with the president tonight in the first place? Elon's eyes grew so wide they looked like they might pop out of his head. You know the First Lady personally? Sarah and I have been close friends for over 20 years, Dorothy revealed with obvious affection. We first met at an education conference when she was still a young teacher in her home state. We've stayed in touch ever since, sharing ideas about helping children and families. So when you heard I was planning to attend this charity event, I called my dear friend Sarah and suggested she invite you to have dinner at the White House afterward. Dorothy finished with satisfaction. I knew that if you suddenly disappeared from such an important government dinner, the Secret Service would immediately come looking for you. And you knew that would make the revelation of my identity even more dramatic and shocking when it finally happened, Elon said with growing amazement at Dorothy's clever planning. Exactly right, Dorothy confirmed with a pleased nod. I wanted these people to understand not just that they were wrong about you, but how spectacularly and completely wrong they were. Elon shook his head in absolute wonder at this remarkable woman. Mrs. Williams, you're not just a retired teacher. You're not just a generous philanthropist. You're a master psychologist who understands people better than anyone I've ever met. I'm simply someone who cares deeply about making the world a kinder, more compassionate place, Dorothy said humbly. Sometimes that requires a little bit of creative teaching. Across the room, Sophia approached their private conversation with a concerned expression. I'm sorry to interrupt you both, but I wanted to thank you for the most incredible evening of my entire life. We've raised more money than I ever thought possible for homeless families. The money is absolutely wonderful, Dorothy agreed warmly. But that's not the most important thing that happened in this ballroom tonight. What is the most important thing? Sophia asked with genuine curiosity. Dorothy looked around the room at all the changed faces and transformed attitudes. Tonight, several people learned that their actions have real consequences. They learned that how you treat others says much more about your character than it does about theirs. Most importantly, they learned that it's never too late to choose kindness over cruelty. Do you really think they'll change permanently? Sophia wondered with hope in her voice. Some of them will change completely, Dorothy said honestly. Others might slip back into their old, selfish ways after a few weeks or months. But at least now they can never say they don't know any better. They've seen what their behavior looks like, and they've felt what it's like to be judged unfairly. Elon put his arm gently around Dorothy's frail shoulders. You know what amazes me most about this entire evening? What's that? Sophia asked. Mrs. Williams could have revealed who she really was at any point tonight. She could have told everyone about her billion-dollar foundation and made them feel foolish for treating her like she was unimportant and ordinary. Why didn't you tell them? Sophia asked Dorothy directly. Because, Dorothy explained with the patience of a lifetime educator, the lesson wouldn't have been nearly as powerful or meaningful. If they had known I was rich and famous, they would have been nice to me for all the wrong reasons. By staying quiet about my wealth and status, I let them show their true character without any outside influence. Just like Elon did, Sophia realized with understanding. Exactly like Elon, Dorothy confirmed proudly. We both gave these people the genuine chance to do the right thing without any promise of reward or fear of punishment. They failed that important test tonight, but they learned valuable lessons from their failure. Sarah, the First Lady, joined their small group with a warm smile. I have to say, Dorothy, this was absolutely brilliant. I've never seen people's attitudes and behavior change so completely in just one evening. Do you think we were too harsh on them? Dorothy asked, with slight concern. Not at all, Sarah said firmly. Sometimes people need to be shocked into seeing themselves clearly and honestly. Tonight provided exactly that kind of necessary shock. Tony Martinez, the security guard, approached their group with nervous, apologetic steps. Excuse me, Mr. Musk. I owe you the most enormous apology of my life. I almost threw the world's most important man out of this charity event. You were just doing your job the best way you knew how, Tony, Elon said, with understanding and kindness. But tell me honestly, if the exact same situation happened again tomorrow night, what would you do differently? Tony thought carefully about the question. I guess I would remember that every single person deserves basic respect and kindness, no matter what they look like or how they're dressed. And I would trust my own instincts more. You seemed like a genuinely good person from the very beginning. I shouldn't have let other people's prejudices and judgments influence my own behavior. That's exactly the right answer, Dorothy said, with approval and pride. Always trust your heart and your conscience, not just your eyes. As the evening finally came to its end, people began leaving the ballroom one by one. But something fundamental and important had changed forever in each person who had witnessed these extraordinary events. Marcus Wellington stopped at the golden doors and turned back to address everyone still remaining. I want all of you to know that I'm going to honor every penny of my donation pledge, not because I have to, but because I genuinely want to help. And next year, when I return to this charity event dressed simply, I hope I'll remember every single lesson I learned tonight. Isabella Romano nodded in sincere agreement. I'm going to make that documentary about prejudice and kindness, and I'm going to be completely honest about how terribly I behaved tonight. If my embarrassment helps even one person think twice before judging others, it will be worth any damage to my reputation. Dr. Mitchell approached Dorothy one final time. Mrs. Williams, would you consider allowing me to volunteer with your educational foundation? I want to spend my retirement years doing something truly meaningful with my medical skills. I would be deeply honored to have your help, Dorothy said with genuine warmth. As the last guests finally left the ballroom, only Elon, Dorothy, Sarah, and Sophia remained among the elegant decorations and flickering candles. So, Sophia said thoughtfully, what happens now? How do we know if people truly learned from tonight, or if they were just scared by everything that happened? Now, Dorothy said with deep satisfaction and hope, we wait and see if these people keep their promises and live up to their commitments. We watch to see if they choose kindness in their daily lives when no one important is watching. I have complete faith that they learned important lessons tonight, Elon said confidently. You're an absolutely excellent teacher, Mrs. Williams. We're all teachers, Dorothy replied wisely. Every single interaction we have with another person is a chance to teach them something about kindness, respect, and human dignity. Tonight we taught some very important lessons that these people will remember for the rest of their lives. She looked around the beautiful ballroom one last time, taking in the elegant chandeliers and marble floors that had witnessed such an extraordinary evening. But the most important lesson isn't the one we taught tonight, Dorothy said with the deep wisdom that comes from a lifetime of understanding people. It's the lesson we all need to remember and practice every single day of our lives. What lesson is that? Sarah asked with genuine interest. Dorothy Williams, the remarkable woman who had orchestrated one of the most powerful lessons in human behavior ever witnessed, smiled with the gentle wisdom of someone who had spent decades helping others become their best selves. That every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about, Dorothy said softly. Every person deserves kindness, respect, and the benefit of the doubt. And every person has the capacity to surprise you with their goodness if you give them the chance to show it. As they walked together toward the golden doors, leaving behind a ballroom forever changed by the events of one extraordinary evening, Dorothy's words echoed in their hearts like a promise of hope for a kinder, more compassionate world. What an incredible story about how kindness can change everything. Dorothy's wisdom reminds us that every person we meet deserves respect, no matter how they look or dress. I'm curious, where are you listening from right now? Drop a comment and let me know your city or country. It's amazing how this story about kindness can reach people all around the world. If this story touched your heart and made you think twice about judging others, please hit that like button. It really helps spread this important message to more people who need to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Every time you subscribe, you're helping us share more stories about kindness, respect, and treating everyone with dignity. Speaking of amazing stories, there's another incredible video appearing on your screen right now that you absolutely have to watch. Click on it and discover another story that will change how you see the world. Remember, true wealth isn't money. True wealth is kindness. Let's spread that kindness together, one story at a time.